Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Clear here with a knife video for you. And today I just want to have a bit of a discussion about something that I always hear and I always get sort of feedback about or questioned about from different people. And this is kind of coming out of this knife here. This is the 0300. And since I've had it, a couple people have asked, hey, are you going to de-assist it? And the answer to that question is no, I'm not. Why? Well, because I kind of like it with assisted opening. And that's what I want to talk about. I've got a bunch of knives here, all great knives. This is a Kershaw Blur, Benchmade Barrage, Benchmade 710 McHenry & Williams, Spyderco Southern. These knives are all awesome knives. I really like every one of them. Let's do one more for the fun of it. SOG Aegis. I do like this knife even though it has just the slightest amount of blade play up and down. It's annoying, but I still like it. These are all knives that I like. They're all knives that I use. They're all knives that I carry, that I enjoy having in my collection, that I'll pull off the display rack from time to time and flip them open and close them a few times. Maybe do some task and put them back. These are all knives that I really enjoy. Some of them are assisted opening and some of them aren't. And guess what? In terms of how much I like the knife, it doesn't matter. I like both. I enjoy both. But today I want to talk specifically about assisted opening knives. And I did that way by introduction so that you understand I'm not advocating for or against. I'm just advocating use what you like. Because there seems to be a bit of a bias against assisted opening knives. As if somehow a knife just isn't cool if it has a torsion bar or a coil spring of some kind helping the blade out. You know, now it's interesting that automatics are in a whole new, realm where it's really cool to have automatics, but just don't have that middle ground, right? And so you get people talking about de-assisting knives, and man, I don't like that it can't be de-assisted, when really, at the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter. Now, some knives I think would be great knives with or without. I think the 0300, if it was not assisted, still be a great knife. I think the Blur, if it was unassisted, would still be a great knife. Some knives, the Aegis, I think I prefer it assisted. If it wasn't assisted, I probably wouldn't be as interested in it as I am. Okay? So there's sort of this back and forth that exists. And so I want to make some points about why you'd want an assisted knife, maybe why you wouldn't want one, what's cool about them, what's not cool, and that it's okay to like either one. Okay, so the first question I want to ask is why bother? Why would you have any assisted opening knife? In Kershaw, it seems like all of their sort of budget-friendly knives are assisted opening. This is the Cryo 2. It's been fairly popular for them. You guys know I'm not the biggest fan of this knife, but it's fine. Now, it is assisted opening. And I can tell you that probably that makes it a little more popular in some circles, okay? There will be those who suggest that in certain scenarios you really need assisted opening. Now I'm going to speak to that in a second, but I will say this. Assisted opening knives are kind of fun. And I think one of the reasons that companies make assisted opening knives is just because they know people like to do this. It's kind of fun to flick your knife open and have it just fly out quickly, right? It's just fun. It's just cool. It's kind of a novelty. No, you don't really need it. You just want it. It's just kind of nice, right? Benchmade Barrage. By the way, this thing flies open. And again, do you need it to fly open that way, or is it not possible to get a knife to open quickly without an assist? I don't think so. I think the Spyderco Southern is one of the fastest opening knives that I have in my collection. It's not assisted at all. It's a flipper. But fun, I think, and novelty is one good reason to have an assisted opening knife. I think convenience is another good reason. This is a real story. Here's my 0300 again. I was outside getting some stuff out of the car, and I'd been out there for a few minutes. I wasn't planning to be long, but it is bitterly cold here right now. And so I went out, I was doing some stuff, and I was trying to untie a paracord. I always keep some paracord in the car. When don't you need paracord, right? And so I needed to just cut a piece off that was kind of in a knot. My hands were too cold to deal with. So I pulled my knife out, open it up, and make the cut. Now, my hands were rather cold. And what had happened is, as you know, when your hands start to get really cold, you begin to lose dexterity. And so guess what? It was really nice that I didn't do it on purpose, but I just had happened to put my 300 in my pocket. And because of that, it just popped out and I was able to make the cut I needed to make and then put it back without any issues. Okay, there's something else I'll get to at the end of this video when I compare assist mechanisms in a second. Let me see if I can find a glove here, guys. Just give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, here we go. So, one other reason is this. I'm going to use 2 knives from Benchmade to demonstrate this. So here's the McHenry & Williams. You remember how fast I could open that before? I cannot open it that quickly with gloves on. I've tried. There you go. Can't do it. However, I mean, I can still open it. It's not like, oh, I've got gloves on, I can't open my knife. But notice the difference between that and the Barrage. Okay? There is a noticeable difference when you're wearing gloves. And so it may be that situation, that's one of those times where an assisted opening knife is more convenient. Now, is it necessary? No. I've demonstrated 2 non-assisted knives that open no problem. So it's not necessary, but it can be kind of convenient. I would compare assisted opening as a feature on a knife to, you know, the heated seats in your car or the automatic starter. Do you need those things? No. Do you kind of like them? Sure. Now, I know they're one more thing to go wrong, and a torsion bar or a coil spring is one more thing to go wrong in your knife, and I'll speak to that at the end. But convenience, I think, and even a slight advantage in certain situations. Let's say you're in a car accident and you're a little disoriented. Let's say, you know, you've climbed a ladder and got tangled in something, or you're climbing out of a burning building and your clothing gets caught on the window on your way out. Is it nice to be able to grab a knife and have it open like that, make your cut, and move on with life? Yeah, that's nice. Now, are you going to die without it? Is it a life and death deal? I don't think so. Not even in the situation I've described, because look at this. Right? Even offhanded, right? I can still do it, no problem. The people I would suggest who make this point about, boy, you just have to have an assisted knife, probably haven't used the knife they're carrying enough, you know, to get where they can flip it open really quickly. I would say any knife you carry, if you carry it often enough and you use it often enough, you're going to get pretty proficient at opening and closing it quickly and easily. It'll come just second nature. You won't even think about it. Okay, so I think there's a level of convenience and maybe a slight advantage in certain very select situations. Now, what about reasons to de-assist or not buy an assisted opening knife? Would there be some people, would there be even some legitimate reasons to prefer this knife over this knife? And I mean only for the opening mechanism, other than there are some things I like better about this knife. There's some things I like better about this knife too, but we're not going to compare that. Let's just compare the opening mechanism. Are there some reasons to prefer this? Sure. This knife is a little more, there's one less thing to go wrong, right? There is a spring in here, and it's a tight spring, and it shoots that blade open. Could that spring eventually fail? Yeah. Now, I would add that this knife has 2 Omega springs in it as well, and those Omega springs do fail. You can find all kinds of stories about that. So, springs fail. That's the reality of this situation, and that is one reason you may want to de-assist your knife. Or prefer assisted opening knives where the spring does not serve as the detent. So some knives, let's see, the Blur is kind of a well-known one that can be de-assisted and still function pretty easily. The 0300 is a pretty famous example of one that can't be. There's no detent on this knife except for the spring. So you can't, unless you're going to go ahead and create your own detent ball, or I guess there's a detent ball, there's just no detent hole in the blade. So unless you want to go and drill your own detent hole in the blade, you can't de-assist this knife and have it function properly. Okay, so that's a reason why maybe you wouldn't want an assisted opening knife. I think another good reason why you might not want an assisted opening knife is location. Okay, are there times when I would prefer to be able to do this? That is, open my knife slowly and under a great deal of control. Yes, there are. It could be a tactical situation. It could be a combat situation in which you don't want anyone to hear this, right? It could be you're at the movies and someone says, hey, can you open my candy? And you don't want to do this, right? And have everyone go, whoa, that guy's carrying a switchblade. No, you're not. You know that, but the people around you may not know. So would there be an advantage to being able to do this? Yes, I think there would. And so there are some reasons, I suppose, and then that has not considered the subjective nature of the knife we carry. There's a lot of knives here. Some people are going to like some and not like others, and that's just the reality. And so it may be that you just don't like assisted opening. Maybe that's just not your thing, and that's great too. Now, what I want to suggest in this video that if you really don't like it, you really don't like it, no big deal. But if you're avoiding it because you've heard someone like me or some other YouTuber say, I don't like it, and you know, I de-assist all my knives or something, and so you feel like that's what everybody should do, or that's what guys who know always do, that's not true. There's lots of guys, you know, I think Carter, you're hard pressed to find a more experienced knife guy than Juju 1313, and he points out the fact that he tried to de-assist his 300 but didn't succeed and gave up and said, hey, the knife is great even with the assisted opening mechanism working. Okay, so there are some good reasons. There are some legitimate reasons I would suggest to not want an assisted opening knife, and if that's you, hey, that's great. I think there are also some good reasons to want an assisted opening knife, and if that's you, that's also great. Now, I want to comment in one more area, and that is, are some assisted openers better than others? And I'm going to say in terms of operation, yes, they are. I want to compare these two blades. Here's the SOG Aegis. Here's the Kershaw Cryo. Notice when I unlock the Cryo, I can do this. See how there's no spring tension through all of this range of motion until I get to here. But by then, it's quite easy to reach around and have no fingers in the way and shut the knife. Now, on the Aegis, there's spring tension every minute, all the way closed. And it's a little easier to operate the Cryo because of Kershaw's spring speed assist, which only works through the first half of the range of motion. Okay, even left-handed, I can operate this knife with one hand. It's not very difficult at all. Now, I will say this knife is even worse. It's extremely, the spring is really, really strong. So it does take a little more effort to open and close the knife. But again, even with my left hand, I can do it, just not as easily. And do I feel like there's a better chance of cutting myself with one of these more so than the other? Yeah. There's more, this one's a little more dangerous. I think Speed Safe is an appropriate name because it gives you the advantage. However, by the way, here's another one. Now this knife, notice it doesn't come all the way down to 90 degrees. The spring is functioning all the way to this point in the range of motion. And I think there's a good reason for that, and the reason is the weight of this blade. Okay, this is a much bulkier blade than any of the other ones that I've shown you, and so I think they've set the spring to push it out just a little bit further to ensure a good deployment. There's a bit of an engineering challenge in moving that big piece of steel with a little tiny spring. Okay, so that is that's one thing to keep in mind. That the Kershaw, that I pretty well prefer the Kershaw Speed Safe above any other assisted opening mechanism, whether that be from Benchmade or CRKT or SOG or anybody else. I do think Kershaw has done a great job with the Speed Safe opening mechanism. One more thing I want to say, and that is reliability and durability. Springs break, not because they're under tension or because they're not under tension. They break from use. They break from this, okay? So, open your knife however many thousand times, and that torsion bar is going to go. Open this knife, you know, dozens and zillions of times, and that coil spring is going to go. Just is. That's the way metal works. It can only deal with repeated stress for so many times, and so eventually, yes, it is going to fail on you. Okay, And that may be one reason. But as I said, you know, if you're a Benchmade fan, every Benchmade that has an axis lock has 2 springs in it anyway, so you're not going to get away from it. Now, having said all of that stuff, how can we kind of wrap things up? I think we can wrap things up by saying this. Enjoy the knives that you use. If you're out there and you're looking for a knife, don't cross it off the list just because it's spring assisted. I think you're going to miss out on some really cool blades if you say, forget it, spring assisted, I'm not interested. On the other hand, if you're just not into spring assisted knives, that's fine. Don't buy spring assisted knives. But don't say to other people who are that like they're idiots or that they should, you know, de-assist every knife because assisted opening is the worst idea anyone ever had. By the way, I would say one other thing, and that is the fact that there are as many assisted opening knives as there are is a pretty good indication that they're pretty popular, okay? So obviously, if you don't like it, that's fine, but there are a lot of people who do, okay? And businesses are always going to serve the numbers, right? If most people want blurs to be assisted, guess what? They're going to be assisted. If they can sell more by making them assisted opening, that's what they're going to do. One other thing that I would like to add, and I mentioned that springs will fail. All of the companies that I've shown you are very good to honor their warranty and take care of their stuff. So if you have an Omega spring that goes, if you have a torsion bar that goes, if you have a coil spring that goes, don't worry, send your blade back to the company and I promise they will take care of it for you, okay? I've had good experience with SOG, with Kershaw, with Spyderco. I've never had to send back a Benchmade, but I don't have as many Benchmades either. I don't have that many SOGs, so I don't know what that says. I only have like this and one other, and I've had to send one of them back, but that's a whole nother video. But the point is, don't worry too much about your torsion bar breaking because most of these knives will still function. That is, you can still open it and cut something, it just won't function properly, number one. Number two, if that does happen and something goes wrong, just send it back. All these companies, in my experience, have been really good to fix stuff for you. So there you go, YouTube. That's my take on assisted opening knives. First, I want to say I kind of like assisted opening knives. Number two, I want to say if you do too, don't be afraid to admit it. It's okay. It's not wrong to like assisted opening knives. And don't listen to the opinion of some YouTuber. You know, if you've watched my videos at all, you know I prefer large knives. And if I pick up something that's small, perfect example is the Cryo 2. I'm not a big fan of this knife. I find it's just too small. Well, that's fine for me. Maybe you love small knives. You don't have to say, oh, Kevin said the Cryo 2 is too small, so I should think it's too small. Think whatever you want. It's going to be your knife. You've got to carry it around, and so whatever you like is what you should do. All right, so there you go. That's my take on assisted opening knives. I think they're a lot of fun. Let's quickly go through and open some for you. There's the Blur. There's the 0300. There's the Barrage. Very, very fast. Let's do a couple more since we're having so much fun. There's the SOG Aegis. And just to show you that non-assisted knives can open just as fast, there's the Spyderco Southern. That's a knife that I need to get on camera more anyway, so there you go. Talk to you later. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you soon.